Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajak Acharya, Ashtotara Shata Shishrimad His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi ki jai. This Karan Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Naam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakti Vrindi ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shoharinam Sankirtan ki jai. Shoma Beta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Prem Anande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bal. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Shumate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tishtara. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlad Ladadaye. Hiranyakashipur Bhakshaha. Shilatanganakalaye. Ito Nrisingha Bharata Nrisingha. Jato jato javitato nrisingha. Bahir nrisingho hridaye nrisinghamading sharanam prapadye. Nrisinghamading sharanam prapadye. Tavakaya kamala bare nakam adbhut sringam dolita hiranya kashipu tanu bringa keshava drita narahari rupa jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare. Nrsimha Bhagwan ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to the ISKCON of Philadelphia Sunday Feast. Welcome all of those who are viewing virtually via Zoom and our YouTube channel. And we also welcome all the devotees that are here volunteering here at the temple to make the Sunday Feast happen. Today we will be starting, just give us 1 second until go ahead. Sorry, we were just moving the prasadam area out. Today we'll be starting the third chapter study of the Bhagavad Gita. Before we begin, we are going to do a quick darshan of our lordships. We'll start with His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shishi Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Flip it around so we get a better view. Shri Jagannath Dev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Shishi Radha Sharad Bihari Ki Jai. And just as a reminder, before we begin, that the temple will open for darshan tonight, starting at 6 o'clock. Those of you who have pre-ordered prasadam or here to pick up milk or just come to see their lordships in person, please come at 6 o'clock. We close at 7:15 this evening. Now we will begin our third chapter study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And it's just going to take a second here to transition from this device to the device we'll be using for that. Hare Krishna, and we're back. Start today by chanting Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajana
Yashodanandana
Ranjana.
Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari.
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashota Tara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashota Tara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki
Jai,
Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki
Jai,
Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai,
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai,
Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai,
Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamrakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai,
Shri Brindavan Dham Ki
Jai,
Shri Mayapur Dham Ki
Jai,
Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti
Jai,
Tulsi Devi Ki Shri
Jai,
Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai,
Mridanga Ki
Jai,
Tamaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai,
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol,
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna,
Assembled devotees. All
Hare
glories
Krishna,
to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
all glories to the feet of Guru and Gauranga, Hari Hari Bol.
Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Nitinamri Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shratane Shri Guru Kurna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Itinamri Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamri Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nivishesha Shinyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Welcome once again. As today we will be beginning a new chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as it is, chapter number 3, entitled Karma Yoga. I'll put it up on the screen. Those here with books can follow along as well. Here we go. It's up on the screen now. We'll chant the Sanskrit. We'll do it together. I'll chant it and then you can chant it when I'm finished. Arjuna Uvacha Jayayasi Chit Karmanaste Matta Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Gure Mam
Tatkim karmani khore mam.
Niyoj Jayasi Keshava
Niyojyasi keshava.
Jayasi Chit Karmanaste
Jyayasi chit karmanaste.
Matta Buddhir Janardana
Matta buddhir janardana.
Tat Kim Karmani Gure Mam
Tatkim karmani khore mam.
Niyojayasi Keshava
Niyojyasi keshava.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna vacha.
Jayasi Chit Karmanaste
Jyayasi chit karmanasti
Mata Buddhir Janardana
mata buddhir janardana
Tatkim Karmani Gure Mam
tatkim karmani ghore ma
Yojayasi Keshava
niyo yasiki shava Arjunuvacha
Arjuna Vacha
jyayasi chit karmanaste
Sikit Karmanaste
mata buddhir janardana
Mata Buddhir Janardana
tatkim karmani ghore ma
Tatkim Karmani Gure Mam
niyojayasi shava
Niyojayasi Keshava
Arjunuvacha
Jayasi chit karmaste
Jayasi Chit Karmanaste
mata buddhi janardana
mata
Buddhir Janardana
tatki karmani gore ma
Kim Karmani Gore Mam
yo jayasi kesava
Yorjijasi Keshava Jayasi Chit Karmanyaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tapkim Karmani Gore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava Jayasi Chit Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tatkim Karmani Gore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chit Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tatkim Karmani Gore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. Anybody from online that would like to chant?
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna Vacha
Jayasi Chit Karmanaste
chit karmanasti
Mata Buddhir Janardana
mata buddhir janardana
Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Ma
Tatkim Karmani Gore Mam
Niyojayasi Keshava
Yojayasi Keshava. Anyone else? Synonyms. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said, Jayayasi, better. Chit, if. Karmana, then fruit of action. Te, by you. Mata, is considered. Buddhi, intelligence. Janardana, O Krishna. Tat, therefore. Kim, why? Karmani, in action. Gure, ghastly. Mam, me. Niyojayasi, you are engaging. Keshava, O Krishna. Translation? Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Question mark. I'm going to read the purport to both this verse, and then we're going to do text number 2. It's a short purport as well, we'll read. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the consciousness of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view of delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia. One with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place. One may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or working Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Arjuna continues with his question, so we're going to read that as well in text number 3.2. I'll just chant this and read through in the interest of time. Yamishreneva vakyena mohayeshiva me tarikam varanishchitya yena shrenoham apnuyam. Purport. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be more beneficial. Second, I just have to meet somebody here. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruit of desire, and the position of a neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparent confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnana Timmarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. The text once again, I'm just going to read it continuously. Arjuna said, O Janardhan, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be more beneficial for me. Sometimes we're faced in life with contradictory statements. Sometimes we're given instructions to carry out. I remember one time I had two bosses, and they each told me to do two different things. And you feel like you're in no man's land. If I do this, I'm damned. If I do that, I'm damned. You know, which one should I do? And sometimes you just say, just tell me. I don't even need to understand. Just tell me what you want me to do. So this isn't necessarily a case where there's a contradictory statement being made by Lord Krishna. It's actually a misunderstanding on the part of Arjuna. Through his perception, he is seeing it as a contradiction. And therefore, he calls them equivocal instructions. The word equivocal means it's open to multiple interpretations or multiple meanings. So as a good student, he placed this question before Krishna for further elaboration. And as a result, Krishna then elaborated. Instead of stopping at the end of chapter 2, he then elaborates the remainder of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 2 is entitled the of the
Content of Gita summarized.
So it's a summary, meaning that it contains everything that you'll find later in the Gita. So in a nutshell, Krishna put everything into chapter 2, but it didn't necessarily soak in, and there was a little bit of a misunderstanding on Arjuna's part. And for our benefit, we're going to now be able to understand it a little bit better ourselves. So we also may find examples where we've been given instructions from somebody or statements, and we're the ones that are actually misinterpreting them due to our proper understanding. So I have one example of that. And in the meantime, you can think maybe something will pop into your head where you fell into a similar situation. When the temple was when the deities were being moved from the old temple building to this temple building, I was asked to help out in some way. And one of the main pujaris that day, was trying to put it all together. He says, take these backdrops over there, take them now and put them up. So I took the backdrops and I went over and I hung them. And when they got over here with the deities, he says, who put these backdrops up? They're not supposed to go up yet. So the reason why is because they wanted to put the deities in from the back at the time. I didn't know that. That was due to my misunderstanding. If I knew that that was the way that the deities would be placed on the altar, I wouldn't have put the backdrops on. So the instruction wasn't wrong. The backdrops needed to come over and they needed to go in. It was just the understanding of the sequence in which that needed to be done that I didn't have knowledge of. So therefore, for me, it seemed like it was a contradiction. You told me to put it up, now you're telling me to take it down, that they shouldn't be here. So we may find ourselves in these situations. The instruction isn't contradictory. We're just in lack of proper understanding. So here's the dilemma that Krishna was facing, and we're going to go through it a little bit in detail through the second chapter. He's hearing Krishna's words describing through the second chapter. He hears that Krishna's being told, you need to become renounced, detached. Use your intelligence to avoid sinful action. But then he's also saying you should fight. How do you place them together? The process that was being described of karma yoga, or how to act properly in Krishna consciousness with detachment, and the process of jnana yoga, that in which one renounces from action, can appear to be two separate paths, leading in two separate directions. But they can also be perceived as two different rungs on the ladder of spiritual advancement, leading in the same direction. They actually both come together perfectly in the process of Krishna consciousness. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through this class. Now, Arjuna was a well-educated was a well-educated person, especially on spiritual topics. We know that he was exemplary in the fighting arts and the martial arts. He was born half deva, half man, and he was trained by some of the greatest warriors. Was given great weapons by the demigods. In fact, Krishna tells him when he starts doubting what he should be done, Arjuna begins to doubt, why should I fight? Why do I want to do this? There's so much havoc that's going to come, so many problems that are going to come just by me fighting. What does Krishna say to him? He tells him that, you know better than this, right? That's what he tells him. He says, this mentality is not befitting of a person who knows the value of life. You know better. So Krishna is taking this as an opportunity to re-educate Arjuna. This is an important point because we are all originally Krishna conscious entities. We're spirit souls originally Krishna conscious. Due to our association with Maya, the material energy, the illusory energy, we have forgotten our original position. Krishna comes to speak the Bhagavad Gita in order to reestablish this connection, to wake us up and to remind us that we are all eternal servants of the Supreme Lord and how to act. Now, being well educated, I'm sure Arjuna, if this being placed to one of his peers, if one of his peers were going through this situation, he would probably have good advice for them. In fact, giving good advice oftentimes sometimes comes naturally if we are in tune with, Krishna consciousness. We can refer to the scriptures, refer to what great devotees say in their classes, the advice that is given. But when the turmoil falls into our lives, sometimes it's really hard to apply it ourselves. Isn't it true? So, and the reason because is our attachments obscure our clarity of thought. It obscures our reality that's really there. So Arjuna, likewise, was attached. He was attached to what could happen if so many people died at his expense. What he saw as his expense. And that's why we need good friends. To be able to guide us, to help us. Arjuna had the supreme friend. He had Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna has no material qualities, so he's not overcome by illusion. He's not defective in any way. He doesn't fall victim to lust, greed, or anger. He doesn't forget. In fact, he tells Arjuna, I've known everything that has ever happened to you and everything that's ever happened to everyone else. So he is the best of friends. And just as Arjuna had Krishna as his dear friend that could guide and instruct him, we'll also hear today how we actually have that same access to Lord Sri Krishna through his instructions and the guidance through the Supersoul. Now, when Krishna begins talking to Arjuna, and the reason I'm bringing this back up again is because it all comes together with Arjuna's question, Arjuna's doubt at this point. Krishna needed to reestablish the foundation of knowledge with Arjuna. So Arjuna put forth, and we're not going to go over each argument. We've gone through that part in the second chapter. But Arjuna made sound logic. And to many people, when they read it, they say, this is sound logic. And as a matter of statesmanship, he also made good good logic. But he was missing the foundation in which all other knowledge is built upon. And that knowledge is knowledge of the self in relationship to the body. So Krishna runs through these points in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. He tells them, you have to tolerate your senses and the mind's demands, because happiness and distress, they come and go. The material body, there's no endurance to it. However, the spirit soul is everlasting, and therefore do not lament for the material situations that come into your life, because they will also disappear. And the material body, if the material body disappears now or tomorrow, it's eventually going to happen. But that which is dwelling in the body, the spirit soul, will continue on. You should execute your prescribed duties, and that leads to knowledge and detachment, which will ultimately lead to liberation. However, neglecting your prescribed duties, you'll actually incur sin by doing that. And not only will you incur sin, your reputation will be ruined. And for a respectable person, dishonor is actually worse than death. Krishna is motivating Arjuna so that he can fight and overcome this lack of understanding which has overcome him due to his attachments. Finally, he tells Krishna, finally Arjuna hears from Krishna that only good will arise in this battle. You win is a win-win situation. He explains to him, you win, you rule the kingdom, and you are the one that I have chosen to rule the kingdom. You lose, you go to the heavenly planets, and you enjoy there. So really, there's no reason for lamenting. And then as we continue through the second chapter, there something occurs where Krishna then begins to introduce not just knowledge, but he now explains to him how to act in that knowledge. So in the 38th verse, Krishna says, "Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by doing so you will never incur sin." And it is at this point Krishna introduces the point of Buddhi Yoga into the conversation. And this is the point which confuses Arjuna. The term Buddhi Yoga is the word Buddhi is translated as intelligence. Intelligence in this sense means our discriminatory power. The mind has the capacity to accept and reject based on what feels good or taste or what the mind feels is going to give oneself happiness, and reject things based on what will give one distress, on the bodily conception of life. The mind is considered, therefore, one of the six senses, because it's really just trying to seek out gratification. The intelligence is higher than the mind and has the capacity to discriminate. So the common analogy that's given is that with medicine, if you give somebody medicine, their tongue wants to reject it because it tastes sour and bitter. But the intelligence has the ability to override the mind because it says, well, even though temporarily it may taste bad, ultimately it will make me well. So that's an idea of the difference, a quick difference between mind and intelligence. So this Buddhi, Krishna is telling Arjuna that you have to act with intelligence. And Arjuna has misunderstood that to intelligence would be to leave the battlefield and enter into a life of seclusion, which he actually offered to do earlier on in the Bhagavad Gita. So, and then he's saying, well, you're telling me, Krishna, first to act with detachment and renunciation, and now you're telling me to go ahead and fight. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting. And then several verses later, he says, keep abominable activities distant by devotional service. And in that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord. So these two statements, Arjuna is having difficulty with. So I want to take a look real quickly at this term, Buddhi Yoga. And this will help as we go through, if we have the same doubt, that why Buddhi Yoga, Srila Prabhupada is translating it as the same as Krishna consciousness or devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada explains this in the purport to the second chapter, text number 39. He explains that Buddhi Yoga is being in direct communion with the Lord, who is sitting in the hearts as Paramatma. And in that direct communion with the Lord directs the intelligence on how to act with discrimination. This is the Lord's mercy upon us. In direct communion with the Lord through devotional service, the Lord directs then the intelligence. That's why it's synonymous with devotional service. So, and then Srila Prabhupada says the verse in which Krishna speaks about this, that exemplifies this, is text 10:10 of the Bhagavad Gita. And I want to read the purport a little bit to this verse. And Srila Prabhupada brings it back to the second chapter. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam tadami buddhi, he uses the word buddhi, yogam tvam, yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So that intelligence is actually developed and given by Sri Krishna himself. When we try to use our own intelligence separate from Krishna, our understanding is imperfect. When Krishna acts through us and gives us that intelligence, then we are in complete union with Krishna. The purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in this verse, the word Buddhi Yogam is significant. We may remember that back in the second chapter, the Lord, instructing Arjuna, said that he had spoken to him many things and that he would instruct him in the way of Buddhi Yoga. Now, Buddhi Yoga is explained. Buddhi Yoga itself is action in Krishna consciousness. That is the highest intelligence. Buddhi means intelligence, and yoga means mystic activities or mystic elevation. When one tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and takes fully to Krishna consciousness in devotional service, his action is called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, Buddhi Yoga is the process by which one gets out of the entanglement of this material world. The ultimate goal of this progress is Krishna. People do not know this. Therefore, the association of devotees and a bona fide spiritual master are important. One should know that the goal is Krishna, and when the goal is assigned, then the path is slowly but progressively traversed, and the ultimate goal of going back to Krishna is achieved. So it's important for us to understand this concept of Buddhi Yoga, how by engaging in devotional service, Krishna, as Paramatma, directs the intelligence of the living being. It doesn't have to necessarily be done independently of the process of Krishna consciousness. It is actually done as part of the process of Krishna consciousness. And that is what Krishna is actually asking Arjuna to do. Act with strong intelligence, directed toward your ultimate good of self-realization. So there's three considerations when we compare the process of action and renunciation. And we're going to end in showing how Krishna consciousness is actually the perfect synthesis between the two. So the first is that there are two separate paths. As Arjuna mentioned, I can either be renounced and leave the battlefield, or I can stay and act and fight. It's one or the other. Now, the process of renunciation, and we'll get more into this next week, is not recommended by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, nor is it recommended by Srila Prabhupada. Because renunciation in and of itself, if a person is conditioned and still has a material body, the material body has to act. It has to have some level of engagement, some level of activity to it. So to simply just renounce, and Srila Prabhupada warns us of this, even in the process of Krishna consciousness, I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna in a secluded place. Even that isn't recommended, because one still needs involvement in activity. So simply just considering these two paths separately is one consideration, but it's an imperfect consideration, because simply just renouncing, we'll find is it's nearly impossible. It's you know, if a person can do it, all power to them. But this is not the process that's recommended for us. Now, the other part is that through our understanding, we can try to say that action creates attachment, but becoming detached actually creates a liberated situation where one is not bound to one's material body. So one can strive and try hard to act in a certain way, but then be detached from the results. They do their duties, the prescribed duties, and they just constantly remind themselves to be detached. And even that will become very difficult. They fill their understanding with knowledge. Knowledge drives them so they don't become attached. That knowledge tells them that they're not their body, their spirit soul. The happiness and distress comes and goes. So they rise above it. In fact, Krishna says later in the Bhagavad Gita that there's different types of people that surrender to me. And one of them is one that is searching for knowledge, searching for this level of detachment from this world. And they're a little bit more further along than those that are just trying to come for wealth or coming for, because they're distressed in this world. But even that is imperfect, because knowledge is not complete unless one understands that they're an eternal servant of Krishna. So in the process of Krishna consciousness, when one applies one's activities in Krishna consciousness, one actually achieves engagement and renunciation at the same time. And that is what Krishna advises Arjuna to do. In the 8th chapter, he tells him, Tatsmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmarya yudyacha mayarpita manobudhir mami vaishyasya asamshaya. He says, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind, your buddhi, fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. In the beginning of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna what real renunciation is. He says, Anastritar karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriya. One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire or performs no duty. So when we understand that we are eternal servants of Krishna, or Krishna is the Supreme Father and we are all his children, acting on behalf of the Master or the Father, one naturally becomes renounced because they're not acting on their own desires. They're acting on what will please the Master. So when we look around this world, we see there's so many activities going on. When we look at this temple, we see that there's so many activities going on. When the activities are done in the temple versus the outside world, the activity may be the same, but the consciousness is different. Because at the center of a temple is Lord Jagannath, Shri Shri Radhashard Vihari, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai. So people come together to cook for the Lord, to make deity garlands for the Lord, to dress the Lord, to clean for the Lord. A very important service. Now, outside of my apartment, I look across and I see there's a pretty nice estate. And during this time of the year, people are planting flowers and cutting the grass and landscaping and doing all this activity for the master of the house, because that's what he wants, to please him. Those same activities, when they're applied to Krishna, is devotional service. When it's done for Krishna, renunciation is achieved because one's no longer desiring to enjoy the results of that activity. Now, that is the point where Krishna is taking Arjuna. And this is a principle that is elaborated on by Srila Rupa Goswami. He defines it as yukta vairagya. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya uchite. That as long as we have a material body, we have to act. We can purify our senses by engaging those senses in the service of Lord Krishna. And when we do so, renunciation naturally follows, because we're not doing it for our own enjoyment, we're doing it for Krishna's enjoyment. And therefore, we can perfect our lives and go back home, back to Godhead, by Krishna's grace. So this is where, again, how the synthesis of these two ideas of renunciation in knowledge and action come together, and how this, what Arjuna is saying, is an equivocal instruction or could have multiple meanings. Actually, if one understands it properly, it has one meaning. And Krishna will explain this as we go through the 3rd chapter and throughout the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. At this point, I will stop and ask for any questions or comments from both the devotees online as well as those that are in the live audience. Hare Ashra Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Drona. I enjoyed the class so very much. It was fun. One point I was thinking, you were elaborating on the intelligence, Buddhi Yoga, coming directly from Krishna. And Krishna says that he's the intelligence of the intelligent man. He elaborates that on that, remembrance, knowledge, and forgiveness come from him. So my point that I'm asking is that how does the devotee know that his intelligence is coming, that he's being guided by the Lord within, and not feel that his intelligence is contaminated, being influenced by the lusty mind?
Good question. An important one, because we could be falsely under the impression that I'm chanting Hare Krishna and performing devotional service. Therefore, Krishna is telling me the right thing to do and therefore guiding me. So Srila Prabhupada, I believe, gives the answer in the purport here. He says that people do not know this. Therefore, the association of devotees and a bona fide spiritual master are important. So that same Paramatma manifests himself as externally as the spiritual master, the guru, that will guide the disciple when the disciple is ready. Naturally, we understand that the three processes of checks and balances as to consistency is that action and thought needs to be consistent with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. But for ourselves, simply just relying on the inward guidance of the Paramatma could be very dangerous. And therefore, it's so important we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna and seeking out a spiritual master as he sought out Lord Krishna. From within the heart, Paramatma will guide us to a bona fide spiritual master who will direct us outwardly how to properly engage in devotional life. Would you have anything to add to that, Prabhu?
No, I like your answer. I just think it's the practical answer, because you are explaining Arjuna's situation, but we're following in the footsteps. So we need practical ways that we can stay Krishna conscious, that we can utilize our intelligence. Only thing I can think is that in connection to what you were saying, according to what you explained, that by proper engagement, if our actions are done for the satisfaction of Guru and Krishna, if that's our goal, not to be the controller, not to be the enjoyer, it seems that, again, we'll be able to hear, because we get so much help from, help along the way. But I think it's so important that we're able to discriminate in our everyday service, in our everyday lives. That's
Definitely. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Any devotees in the audience would like to any questions or comments? Good, Prabhu.
You mentioned that
Also, was very good, and I like it. You explained very nicely in very simple language, how to really perform our activities and how to dedicate to Krishna. Thank you very much for that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Kaivalya Prabhu. Vishnu Gira
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu.
One second online.
Sure,
We're gonna,
Maharaj.
Vishnu Gira Prabhu is going to ask or make a comment.
you mentioned that Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight. But if its prescribed duty was to fight, then how come Lord Krishna went to the assembly of the Kauravas and tried to seek peace prior to it?
The question was, if Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, why did Lord Krishna go to the assembly of the Kauravas to first seek peace? My answer would be that fighting the duty of a Kshatriya is also to maintain peace and diplomacy. And fighting is sometimes necessary, but is not always the first, is usually not the first or recommended first line of action. So there were many attempts made by the Pandavas, by Lord Krishna to try to seek peace, but it was inevitable due to the attitude of the Kauravas that this peace was not going to be achieved. So he had to fighting at that point became necessary, and as a Kshatriya, as a warrior, it became his duty to execute this.
Not in all circumstances fighting is a prescribed duty, but just in this particular circumstance, it's Krishna.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a very good point, Vishnupada Prabhu, you're making, that this is not a, this is not in every circumstance. This is simply just because of all other methods were exhausted. And this actually just, this should be applied when we talk about prescribed duties and fighting. This should be applied to the current situation that we're looking at in the Bhagavad Gita with Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Yeah. Lord Krishna.
Arjuna is struggling to fight the war. I think we are all fighting our own war. They are struggling to accept the God's message. And rather than following that message, we try to question it all the time and fail to understand by following the Lord. Sometimes it is contradicting ourselves, sometimes it is like, would I get the right message if I follow? Like, it's kind of I feel like we are all in a state of Arjuna in Krishna Yoga. In the end, they are in. So my thought is that the God is giving us enough opportunity to change ourselves, to follow and do the right thing, what it is.
Yeah. So the comment was made for the people online, was made here live, that that we run into the same situation as Arjuna, and that we're also, struggling to accept Krishna's direction and desire. So the only thing to that is that we have to remain in Krishna consciousness. That is the solution, is that we practice Krishna consciousness. We make our lives Krishna conscious. And when we do that, we'll start to notice that those doubts or those confusions become less. The practice of Krishna consciousness is very natural because it's who we actually really are underneath everything. We are Krishna conscious entities. So to eliminate that, we read the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna this didn't have to be transcribed and written and translated, but it was done for us. Srila Prabhupada went through great measures to do this for us. So the important message is there. We have to read it and understand it and apply it in our daily lives. Yes. Thank you. Mother Sojanya, I think it was you. Did you have a...
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavad Pranam, Sarva Shri Prabhupada. It was very nice class. The 2-3 examples that you gave, which it just took me like, yes, that's what we experience every day, every situation, every place, So I just wanted to say that by taking a very good examples, you really made the takeaway, like what Krishna wanted us to think, how he wanted us to think when we were put into that situation. So I just wanted to say that it was really nice.
Thank you. I'm glad that you connected with this message. And I'll be interested to hear from you because you're taking Bhakti Shastri. So I'm going to be interested to hear from you some more of your realizations on the Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So at this point, we'll conclude. We're at 6 o'clock. The temple is open. And I have a couple of announcements that I want to make, announce to the devotees. This coming week, we invite everybody to join us every morning at 7:50 for our Srimad Bhagavatam class, 7 days a week. We invite you also to join us some of our evening programs. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have Bhagavad Gita. All right, we call it our happy hour. End your day, conclude your day, and unwind, drinking a cup of nectar of the Bhagavad Gita, 5 o'clock to 5:30. And then also we have, starting last week, we started our family business. It's a book by His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu that highlights the importance of book distribution. How ISKCON was really founded on this principle of distributing these great literatures to society at large. We invite you to come and join as our temple begins to refocus our attention on distributing this transcendental knowledge to society at large. Sometimes it's a little bit intimidating to think, okay, I'm going to go out and give books to people, but if they don't want them, what will they say? Reading this and doing this as a sangha, a group reading, we'll develop a nice connection with each other and confidence in one another that we can do this together as a temple. It'll not only benefit us, our community, but think of all the people out there that don't have this knowledge. As Srila Prabhupada said in the purport, people don't have this understanding, and we have the ability, it's within our hands to give it to them. We're also going to be starting Thursday evening, starting at 6:40. That's right, 6:40. Bhagavad Gita shlokas, frequently quoted by Srila Prabhupada. This will be led by Vishnu Prabhu. We'll go over pronunciation. We'll go over the different famous shlokas. We'll go over word by word. We'll learn it word by word. And then we'll also learn the English translation. So many of us, we really need this in our lives. Haryashtra Prabhu always says that these shlokas are like astras or weapons. We need to be able to pull them out when we need them in our lives. So this gives us an opportunity to really, a time of the week to learn it the right way. Finally, we want to end by thanking our Sunday Feast sponsors. Just give me a second while I pull these up. We have 2 Sunday Feast sponsors this week. We're going to ask for prayers and blessings from the assembled devotees, for these devotees. We're asking for prayers and blessings for Narendra C. Patel, the grandfather of Murali Patel, who sponsored this feast in the loving memory of her grandfather. So also, Revati, her father recently passed away over this past week. Revati Mataji. So our prayers go out to Ramcharan Prabhu and his family on the loss of Raman Lal Kandarwal. The feast was sponsored by Aditya Kandarwal. So let us together, let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And we also have one last one. The feast was also sponsored by Narendra Patel, who I believe he was on the call earlier. We'd like to thank you. And let's collectively show our gratitude as well as offer prayers to the souls that have departed. Let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra together 3 times. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, the temple is open for darshan. We hope to see you tonight. If not, throughout the week during our variety of classes.